Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to more Geek News Marathon Night, the show where we take a longer series from an older time, and we dissect it in groups of episodes and give you guys our thoughts on each. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. Joining me, as always, is my lovely wife, Andrea. Andrea, is it summer enough for you yet?
It's not even summer yet.
Nope. Technically spring. But is it summer enough for you yet?
I just answered that.
So, no.
What do you think?
Because I think, little dude, that it might just be even more summer than you might think it is. I'm working on my Tyson's grandpa. Is it working?
Yeah.
Groovy. All right. So yeah, we are back to Beyblade, and this time around, I'm gonna be honest with you, Andrea. I think I saw these episodes for the first time when we watched them, because I was like racking my brain today, and I don't remember seeing the things that we're gonna talk about. Maybe keep in mind when Beyblade was airing. Jiminy Christmas, who had it? I think by the time I saw it, ABC Family had it. So at that point, if it showed up on another channel, I'm not sure where. But I don't remember the episodes that we're about to talk about, and I've been racking my brain thinking, well, I've seen this, so I should have seen them. I must not have. Do you remember this?
Kind of.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I guess you saw the whole season, but I didn't.
I saw a majority of it, but it's been
so. Let's go ahead and do this episode by episode, but just to kind of give you guys that sense of like, I think I'm seeing these for the first time, and on top of that, like how do we feel like the series is going now that we're 32 episodes in? We're two tournaments down. We're on our way to a third, but it looks like we're gonna have to take the long way to that tournament. Are we okay with what the series is doing right now?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I tend to like it just because, I like tournament anime, so at that point, I don't care. Like, if you find a way to be able to do conflict, I really don't care. As long as the conflict makes sense. So, that being said, let's get into episode 29, which is like the easiest thing to do here. It's called Play It Again, Dizzy, and it's a recap episode.
Funny how you guessed what type.
So I'm going to approach this as if we are talking to somebody who has never dealt with 90s, 2000s anime or series of any kind. A recap episode is basically where they find a convenient way within the context of the series to save on money and recap the events that have happened up until this point. Because live TV was happening. And so at that point, somebody might be jumping in, and this is where they start. And so at that point, they don't know what's happened. Maybe they jumped in halfway into the US tournament. They don't even know that an Asian tournament happened, kind of thing. And so this was one of those means to be able to bring people up to speed, and something that we, as old farts, because I don't mean to say it that way, Andrea, but it's kind of true. We dealt with this because it was just something that existed for series at a time. Just curious, like what was your usual take on recap episodes when you would come across them in Pokemon or whatever? Would you just go watch something else? Would you watch them just because, maybe your favorite moments in it? Or would you, or were you just in the middle?
Just in the middle.
So you didn't hate them, but you didn't love them. You just
They're just recaps.
Let me put it this way, because, another thing that was happening was we were recording these episodes on VHS, because sometimes we had busy schedules. And so at that point, we couldn't watch at 6, 7, 8 a.m. when they were showing.
That was the good old days when you record.
Yeah, exactly. And so at that point, if you got a recap episode on your VHS, would you just record over it? Because you technically already have all the stuff? Or would you just keep it?
Wait, what?
So, like, you come across a recap episode that has, like, all the stuff that you've seen before. Would you then say, oh, okay, I'm going to rewind this, and the next episode, I'll just record over it?
Why would I?
I'm asking, would you? So you'd keep it?
Probably.
Okay. Because I know, like, myself included, and I know a bunch of people that would do this. They would look at recap episodes and basically go, ugh, and record over it. And I actually knew people that if they saw recap, for example, my brother from another mother, if he saw a recap episode, and this was a guy who, like, diligently got up at the time that the show was supposed to have it because he wanted to see it live. And in some cases, these were, like, the first time we would ever see these episodes. When he would see those episodes, he actually would start throwing things. Because he got up at, like, 4 a.m. or whenever it was to watch it, and he could have slept in.
That's true.
So, like, some people had that viewpoint, but you were indifferent on that regard.
It just...
My viewpoint was like, oh, I got a recap. I'll rewind it and record over it because I don't need the recap. But I never hated it because, you know, sometimes you'd get some additional context, or at the very end you would get a scene that would kind of set up the next potential arc of it. In particular, an anime, like US based series wouldn't do that, but anime would, because anime like telling a story. So at that point, Play It Again Dizzy is pretty much this, and the setting that they have is that for some reason they like to paint that Kenny is going to this film noir bar as a detective or a journalist. I'm not sure which, because frankly, with the fedora and the trench coat, it could be either. Given the setting that he's trying to do, because if it was a film noir detective, he probably wouldn't be sitting in front of a laptop collecting footage and data. So at that point, that's what I'm saying, like, he could have been a journalist and just like, oh, I'm collecting all of my data and my information so that I can get ready to send this story out, kind of thing. And he then recounts the events that we've had up until this point. The beginning, where Tyson had basically earned the notice of Kai into the regional qualifiers in Japan, where specifically what got shown was Kai versus Tyson. I forgot how high impact that match actually was. And I kind of wish that, you know, some of the other big bouts that we had seen were as epic as that. But that's me. And then for the Asia tournament, the recap, the genuine recap that we got of that was Lee versus Ray. So they completely ignored Lee versus Tyson, but we did get to see Mariah versus Ray. So that got shown. And then we also got to show the opening scene that we actually didn't talk about, when Max faced off against, what was his name? Greg, I think?
Gary?
Gary, yes. And apparently in the last match that they had, he pulled on the launcher for his Beyblade so hard he crushed the launcher. I forgot that. That is so dumb, and I love it for it. I don't know why I forgot that, because that is genuinely awesome. That sets up a character as far as I'm concerned. Because that just screams, I ain't holding back anymore. In fact, that would have been cool if Steve did that.
Oh, yeah?
For his Beyblade. Oh, that would have been great. If, like, he kicked the football so hard that, like, it dinged the Beyblade so it couldn't be put into a football anymore. That would have been pretty cool. But, yeah, so we got that, and then we got the U.S. tournament, where we got recaps of pretty much all the final matches, where we got Tyson versus Steve, we got Ray versus Eddie in that last moment where Drigger got poisoned, and then we got the last moment between Michael and Max. and ultimately just kind of showing what the Bladebreakers had to go through in order to get to this point, collecting all of the data while having the weird sexual innuendo kind of discussions that Kenny and Dizzy have. They really sometimes. Am I the only one thinking they sound like a married couple?
Pretty much.
In some right? In some cases they kind of do. And one of the things that happens, guys, when you're married is that everything kind of becomes a sexual innuendo at some point or another. And that's basically what's happening with Kenny and Dizzy, is everything. It's starting to become innuendo and flirting and jokes. And it's just like, this kid's flirting with his computer. So it's kind of weird, but the episode kind of wraps up with Ray, Max, and Tyson coming to get Dizzy, or coming to get Kenny to get ready for their upcoming tournament, which we'll find out where it is next in the next episode. But that's kind of how they wrap things up. But I'll save that for mine. But that's pretty much it. What did this episode do right for you, Andrea?
Well, it was a little nice recap.
It is an interesting recap. I'll actually say the setting for the recap is actually pretty well done. I'm a Gundam fan, and they are probably the biggest bad examples when it comes to recap episodes, because all of their recap episodes are incredibly boring, but you want to watch them because the last 5 minutes will be setting up the next arc, kind of thing. And so compared to that, this was a lot better. I do have one problem with it, but I'll get to that in the negatives. Any other positives that we want to state?
No.
Do we think that they showcased the right matches for the recap?
I guess if you had to pick and choose which ones.
I tend to agree. I don't think Max and Gary needed to be there the entire time. I actually think it would have been cool if we had gotten some kind of match between Kevin and Tyson, because Kevin doesn't really get showcased because he's just like a little bastard. But and maybe even if they'd showcased Tyson versus Lee, that might have been a cool thing, because that was still a good highlight for Tyson, even though we wanted Ray versus Lee. The U.S. tournament, I can guarantee you, was exactly what it needed to be. In fact, I think one of the flashbacks was also when Erica, right? She basically bitch slapped Max. And that was, again, it's so stupid when you look at it. The launcher is a tennis racket, and she serves the Beyblade to launch it. It's still so dumb, but, we got to see that at least. Any negatives to this? I will tell you one right off the bat. When Kenny and Dizzy are basically the same character to me, as far as I'm concerned. That's what happens when you have a married couple there. When Kenny sits down at the bar, he orders milk on the rocks. Kenny, there is seriously something wrong with you. I get why it was on the rocks, because it was a bar environment. But Kenny, there's something seriously wrong with you. Any negatives for you?
Well, probably it's just too bad that they only picked certain things, to be, and for the.
You have a 20-minute episode.
I know.
You've got only so much. Now so Gundam's the biggest offender in this regard. What they normally will do, Andrea, is either they will have 2 episodes, so basically an hour's worth of recaps, or they'll take they'll basically take a recap and put it into an entire movie. I'm not kidding. There's a lot of Gundam movies that are basically glorified recaps of the series. It's kind of annoying. I mean, Dragon Ball does this too, but at least Dragon Ball tries to paint it in a different kind of atmosphere. Different characters, different setting, everything like that. But no, Gundam is a very, very big offender in this regard. So, I mean, you had 20 minutes to work with. So, I mean, you could have had more clips, but what else would you have added?
I don't know. Probably.
See, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Because they added what they could. So that I think that's pretty much all the positives and the negatives. Out of 5, what would we give Play It Again, Dizzy?
Just 2.
2. It's a recap episode. There's not really a whole lot happening here. Then we move to episode 30, Cruising for a Bruising. So this is when we find out that the next tournament that the Bladebreakers will be attending is going to be in Mother Russia. Something tells me it's going to be cold, comrade. And in order to get there, they are taking a cruise across the Atlantic. I don't know why across the Atlantic, because they're in Japan, so they need to cross the Pacific first. But again, series is supposed to be in the US. I get it. It's not. But yeah, on the cruise, this is where we get to Kenny trying to basically say, like, while we're making our way to Russia, we really do need to be training. And in the meantime, we also, because it's a cruise ship, somebody has to have seasickness, and of course it's Kenny. So the whole purpose of this episode is primarily things to get Kenny's mind off of his seasickness. Now, the way he proposes is that they train. Because that's how Kenny thinks. Like, Kenny's the coach. I know that Kai likes to say he's the coach of the team, but really Kenny's the coach, right? Because he's the one that's studying the tapes, and he's the one augmenting the Beyblades. He's the coach. So his premise is like, I want to go and train, but instead all of the various characters are saying, you want to know what you need to do for your seasickness? And so we go into a couple of things. First of all, Tyson recommends the pool. Tyson apparently is a very bad friend.
I didn't think it was the pool.
Yeah, he recommended going to take a swim.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was thinking it was like food or something.
No. That was Max.
Oh, okay.
That was Max. Because remember, when they went to the pool, they met Max at the pool. And then Max goes, oh, you're dealing with seasickness? Do you want to know what you need to do? You need to go eat a bunch of freaking gourmet food. Max is apparently also a very bad friend. Because I'm especially perturbed at this because I just barely got over a stomach virus myself. And the last thing I was thinking of doing was going to a pool to make myself feel better. If anything, I would be more worried that I would upchuck in the pool and I would get in trouble. Kind of thing. And then you tell them to go to the 4-star restaurant on the cruise ship. Yes, really rich food is going to help you feel better. Bad Max. That's a bad Max. But when they get there, they're joking about how Ray must be off training somewhere, and he comes out of the restaurant because he's just had a meal. So then, what is his recommendation that they do? I think he was the one that was saying training. Yes, because he wanted to take them to the arcade where they had a bunch of Beyblade bowls. And so then at that point, Kenny basically says, enough. This is what I want to do. I want you guys to go train, and I want you all to do specific training regimens. Max gets sent to the weight room where he can't figure out how the weight machines work. That was actually really funny. It's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to get this thing to work, and he's like sitting at one of those like shoulder crunch stations and thinking it's like a bench. Of course, he's a kid. Ray is told to go and do vigorous training, but he basically bows out of it saying that I just barely ate, and you know what they say about training after you eat, you want to wait 1 hour. I've only ever heard that about swimming.
Yeah.
Because you get a cramp. And according to movies that I've watched, if you get a cramp, you die. Maybe I watched the wrong movies. But Tyson's training is that he has to do, I think it was 40 laps around the cruise ship. Kenny apparently is very vengeful towards Tyson. And so he says he has to jog 40 laps around the ship. They all go off to do their training thing. They're not even worrying about Kai because Kai basically went to the ship's hold and is destroying the cargo because it's nice and peaceful there. The ship's crew never pulled him aside and said, stop fucking doing that. Like, he is literally putting holes in cargo boxes. I'm pretty sure they'd have a problem with that. But okay. And this is when we cut to the arcade, and a lot of people are having fun playing Beyblade, but they notice a particular person staring at all of them in the corner. It's a tall dude with purple hair. And so they immediately invite him over to Beyblade with them, but he's got this really serious look, so he's supposed to be intimidating, right?
Yep.
We cut to Tyson. He's probably only done like 2 laps. He's fed up. He doesn't want to do the jogging anymore. And he goes to the arcade, where he finds out that this purple-haired dipshit has basically made a Beyblade graveyard. He has destroyed everybody's Beyblades who was having fun. So it's kind of a look back to Carlos in the first episode, which we got with the clip episodes. So that was nice. And he's just destroying Beyblades left and right. And this, of course, pisses off Tyson because everybody should have fun, right? So immediately he's getting ready to challenge this newcomer, to which everybody else who's off doing their own thing all hear about Tyson from the Bladebreakers challenging somebody in the arcade. Kenny's pissed because Kenny told him to go do 40 laps. They all gather, and this is when Tyson and we later learn his name is Robert, but Tyson and Robert have a clash of the ages. And we get to see a full-on clash between Tyson and Robert's Beyblades, where Tyson, it looks like he might have the upper hand, but then, of course, Robert then starts trying. And immediately summons out his beast, Griffolian, which is a smidge bigger than Tyson's. So much so that they start calling it a megabit beast. I don't think there's a difference, is there? Doesn't really make sense for there to be a difference.
Maybe just by size, but
size is so hard to figure out with bit beasts anyway, because they're all just like these big magnifications of what's on the bit anyway. So that's when the clash very much changes. Tyson gets his ass handed to him by Robert and Griffolian. Enough to the point where he doesn't get his Beyblade damaged, but it looks like, that might be the end for Dragoon. And that's where that's where the match ends. This is very disheartening to Tyson. And Kai shortly after basically says, we didn't get your name. This is when we find out his name is Robert. And the episode kind of ends with them breaking down this defeat. And Kenny basically saying that we haven't ever... no, it wasn't even Kenny. It was Tyson, who is so disheartened. He basically realizes that, now they're Beyblading on a whole different level. And he's very mad. He almost lost Dragoon, and he's disheartened at this, but thankfully the other Bladebreakers cheer him up and say, well, we'll get better. And we'll go to this tournament, and we'll continue to be the awesome Bladebreakers that we are. And that's pretty much the episode of Cruising for a Bruising. So, what did this episode do right?
Just the humor on some things.
Do you want to give an example?
Oh, just when Tyson was doing the jogging and he was passing...
Oh, yeah, they tried to do an on your left joke where he kept passing one dude in a shirt and he was actually getting annoyed with it. And finally, that's what made him get fed up.
Yeah.
Because he got sick and tired of seeing the exact same Hawaiian shirt on this exact same old dude.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, this was another thing that kind of bugged me with it. Mr. Dickinson and Tyson's grandfather were not with them. They were basically on this cruise unchaperoned. That spells all kinds of disaster, doesn't it? Like, nobody's checking Tyson. Nobody's making sure the Kai doesn't walk off. Yeah, this is a really great idea, Mr. Dickinson. This worked out so well for you. Oh, but it's okay, because now we have Kenny, and Kenny's basically the adult of all of them. No, not really. No, he's too busy having his married relationship with Dizzy and being seasick.
Especially like when Kenny's like hearing about who's challenging, and he's like, oh,
come on.
Tyson. And then...
Yeah, it was like, I shouldn't be surprised at this, but I am, Like, of course it's frickin' Tyson. I will say one positive that this has, which, again, I love anime like this, so the fact that they just set up a new wall. So that new wall is Robert. Robert apparently is on a whole different level compared to everybody else. Even Kai looks like he's somewhat intimidated by Robert. And so at that point, that kind of sets a whole new threshold of power that the Bladebreakers need to reach. And I think this was set up very well. Griffolian it does look like Tyson struggles in this match, but ultimately Griffolian ends it. And ends it in the way that it kind of needs to end. So I'll give that as a positive. Any others that you want to give?
Nope.
Okay, what did this episode do wrong? Poor Kenny. Nobody took care of him. This is why it needed to be chaperoned, people. He was sick to his stomach and out of his mind, and nobody was taking care of him.
Well, yeah, but it's funny how he, when he complains of feeling seasickness, but then when he gets his mind off it long enough and thinks of strategies of what to do in regards to the team, it seems like he forgot all about it, and then
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, it just comes.
And then it comes right back. And that poor, I don't know who voices Kenny, but I hate it when I have to hear voice actors doing the retching, vomiting sound, because I've done that. It hurts a lot. And that's why in a lot of cases, you'll hear a lot of voice actors instead go, brrr, instead of the whole retching sound. But this poor guy, or actually it could have been a woman, this poor woman had to do it numerous times in this episode. Poor woman had to do it numerous times. And poor Kenny, every time we think, oh, okay, you're going to get somebody's going to take you to the nurse's station. Nope. We're going to go to the pool instead. Yeah, that's going to solve it. No, we're going to go to the 4-star restaurant instead. Yep, that's going to solve it. No, we're going to go to the arcade, which is going to give you a massive headache. Bad friends. That's all I'm saying. Any other negatives? For me, this is going to sound mean, but Kenny's training routines, I'm just like, why would Tyson jogging actually matter with his Beyblade? Oh, but their stamina is connected. How?
How's the endurance?
How? Now, here's the thing. In later episodes, they might have been able to fix this, but they should have fixed this here. Because then at that point, all he is doing is making them destroy their bodies for no other reason than destroying them, is all I'm saying. Like, if Max had actually been able to lift something, he might have wrecked his back or his shoulders or something to that effect. I'm kind of surprised they even let him in the weight room, to be honest. Like, this 10-year-old kid wants to go lift weights. Oh, that's cute. That's not a good idea. So, yeah, there you go. Any other negatives that we want to put out? How do we feel about Robert's entrance into the series?
Not bad entrance, I guess.
Would we say he's coming off as evil or just arrogant? I think he's coming off as arrogant.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think he's...
But I mean, you could make the argument that he is evil because he left the Beyblade graveyard.
I think he's just one of those, like, well, if you're not strong enough, that's what
he definitely has the philosophy of, like, power is everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's Seto Kaiba with none of the charm of Kaiba. Mm-hmm. So, out of 5, what would we give Cruising for a Bruising? 4. It sets things up really well and gives a little bit more heat towards the Russian tournament compared to what we've had so far.
Yeah.
Episode 31, London Calling. So, this is where we basically kind of get thrown off the Russian tournament for a little bit because the cruise ship has decided to stop off in Southampton, I think is what they said. And some jackass decided to tell them that they're going to be in port for 6 hours. Turns out it was 5.
Did we ever figure out who that person is?
I have a suspicion, but I'm not gonna spoil it just yet.
True.
But yeah, so it turns out it was 5. So they have officially lost their luggage, I think, because the luggage was probably on the cruise ship. So they are on their own in every sense of the word, and they are stuck in England and have to find some way to get to the Russia tournament. And poor Kenny is flipping out because Mr. Dickinson apparently is going to meet them in Russia. And now they have to explain that they just got stuck in England. Or the UK, if you must. But Ray thankfully has a little bit of an answer. And that answer is they apparently need to make their way to London, where there is a branch of the BBA in the UK. And the BBA, as we find out, is actually supposed to be, not only has this science division in the US, but it's also supposed to be this organization that takes care of the Beybladers, to make sure that they get where they need to go and they're fed and everything like that. Babysitters without being babysitters is the best way to look at this. And they go to the London office where they try to get a hold of Mr. Dickinson. Unfortunately, they don't get a hold of him because he's busy in Russia. And so they're stuck basically waiting in a hotel until they can get a hold of Mr. Dickinson. And this is where they basically are waiting things out and decide to go kind of hit the town and see if maybe they can come up with a plan to kind of increase their strategy and their power as the Bladebreakers to prep for Robert. But then also we find out that it was in this episode where they find out that Robert is I guess he's the regional champion in the UK, but he's also not going to be in the Russian tournament. So they don't have to worry about him yet, but they still want to get stronger, and they go out of the hotel, and this is where we have a moment in a cafe outside the hotel where Tyson's Beyblade is stolen by a man in a dark robe that very much gives off Yu-Gi-Oh vibes. And they chase this guy down an alley where they then find out that his name is Zenitaph, and he is a Beyblader who is looking to destroy Tyson's Beyblade with his bit beast, Sarcophalon. That's kind of a dumb name, I'm not gonna lie. Basically, it is a giant mummy bit beast. To which Tyson obviously doesn't want Dragoon destroyed, and so Max and Ray decide to send out Dracil and Drigger to try and save him. They get caught up in the bandages of Sarcophalon, so everything is looking doomed in this process because it looks like this guy's going to try and destroy their bit beasts. That's when Kai shows up, and Kai has the idea of using strategy against Sarcophalon, basically making Sarcophalon and his giant arms, mummy arms, tie themselves in knots, and this is how he frees Dragoon, Drigger, and Dracil, and Sarcophalon then escapes into the darkness. I should also point out that at the hotel, they receive a mysterious package, and this has a videotape that has Tyson's dad on it. I did not remember that Tyson had a dad in this series. I mean, obviously he had to have a dad, but I don't remember his dad ever being shown.
I don't think he ever has. Not at that point.
Do you see what I mean now? I don't think I ever saw these episodes. It turns out that Tyson's dad is a archaeologist, and he is researching. What do they call them? Something
spirit beasts or
ancient spirits is basically what he called them. But basically, he explains his theory that the ancient spirits or the ancient mythological beasts that we've known in the past have since been carried on into being the bit beasts that we've been seeing in Beyblade, which is kind of a cool thing. It's kind of an interesting way to be able to look at it, and it actually also would explain something that should have been explained in the previous episode, because now, remember, these bit beasts have chosen their Beybladers. So at that point, you can actually make the statement that they have some kind of a spiritual bond between Tyson and Dragoon because his Dragoon is a family heirloom. Ray and Drigger because it was a village heirloom that was passed down. Drasil obviously was passed down in Max's family. And Kai, we're guessing, also has Dronzer because of a family heirloom. So at that point, like, you can now make the argument that you couldn't make in the previous episode that since they have a spiritual bond, if the Bladebreakers were to start strengthening themselves, their bit beasts would get stronger too. It took a whole episode, but they figured out a way to be able to do it, and I'm very irritated that it happened an episode later. So then at that point, Kenny's training would have made sense. But because of this mysterious mummy man, they also realize that they are way out of their league again, and they all, not just Tyson, they all need to get stronger. And this is where we find out that Mr. Dickinson has allowed for them to be able to fly to Russia, but instead Tyson opts to take the train to Russia so that they can meet powerful Beybladers along the way and be able to get stronger that way. It's basically an arc that you would see in tournament anime where, you know, you have to take the long way so that you can continue to get stronger and have that montage while you're making your way to the next tournament. And that's pretty much this episode. So, what did this episode do right, Andrea?
Pretty interesting episode of what they would do now that they're no longer on the boat.
So basically, you like the fact that they're setting up new goals for them.
Yeah.
Okay. I would agree with that. I think that was actually a really good way to be able to set up goals, because like in a Dragon Ball series, this would just be, oh, I'm going to fight other guys and I'm going to get stronger in the tournament anyway. But instead, they basically say, oh, okay, we're going to opt for the long road so that we can level grind and be able to get up to where we need to be in the Russian tournament. It's an interesting way to be able to go about it. Where in a lot of these anime, like I said, they just get stronger throughout the tournament. This is instead basically saying, we're going to take the long way around and we'll get there late, but it's okay because we'll still have our spot, right? Right? I don't think you're going to have your spot, Tyson. But, you know. Since you already mentioned that as a positive, I will actually go into the increased world building, where we now have this ancient connection between the Bit Beasts and Beybladers. I like the fact that they now are basically saying that Bit Beasts aren't just these weird freaking holograms that come out and strengthen, you know, give your Beyblade some kind of strength. They actually are supposed to be these spiritual beasts, and they are connected to their wielder. I like that. I like when they add extra fantastical elements to a show, because that's what I look forward to. I very much don't care about a bunch of kids spinning tops. What I do care about is that, oh, this eagle thing is what makes this baseball player so unique. Oh, this giant griffin is what makes this Beyblader so unique, kind of thing. And I'll admit, one of the things I really do like is a lot of the Bit Beasts that we've seen at this point have been mythological beasts, not just regular run-of-the-mill animals.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we're not having, like, you know, just a regular old lion coming out. Or the better example is when we faced off against the ones that learned from the seal and the tortoise and all that. They didn't have a tortoise Bit Beast kind of thing. No, we still have, like, Dragoon. We still have Drigger. I mean, you could make the argument that happened with the U.S. team, but I'd argue that since they were artificial Bit Beasts, not quite the same thing. Because they still looked really cool. You know, the bison was, even though a bison would be a regular thing, or a regular kind of animal, this was not. It was more of a mythological kind of Minotaur-esque kind of deal. So I like that. Any other positives?
Nope.
What did this episode do wrong? Again, these kids are going unchaperoned. Like, they didn't think this through at all. This isn't the world of Pokemon, where a Pokemon Center is just right around the corner. They had to go from Southampton to London to be able to... If they had no money, they couldn't have done that.
Just imagine how they managed to pull it off, though.
I don't know how they pulled it off, because my guess is they didn't have any money. But okay, yeah, it's through the power of plot convenience we fix this problem, I guess. So that's my negative. What about you?
Well, especially since it's like, I wish it would explain, like, if they received some way of being able to pay for the train and all that stuff.
Yes, it would have been great if we actually did hear back from Mr. Dickinson, like via a video chat or something like that, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, boys, I've got you covered." Because I'm old and rich. But they never did that. What do we think about Zenitaph? Is he a positive or is he a negative in this? I don't know whether to call him either. He's definitely a tonal shift. Because now we're going into that mythological kind of feeling, and he feels more like a villain than the All-Stars ever felt like, than the White Tigers ever. Even Robert doesn't feel like a villain like this. It really now just feels like, I made a joke when we were watching this. This episode just took a turn for the Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like we were about to enter the Shadow Realm kind of thing. So to me, there isn't really a positive or a negative. It's just a really weird shift. What about you?
Yeah, he's definitely probably much more of a villain-like type than...
But are you okay with that happening? Or would you have rather they focused on Robert? Because they kind of write off Robert in this episode. He's not going to the Russian tournament, so why do we care?
Well, you never know if he may show up later, but...
I have a feeling he will, but...
Well, you gotta have some antagonists that are after Bit Beast or so.
How did you feel about Sarcophalon?
It's an unusual one.
I would have preferred an animal. I like a mummy Bit Beast just seems kind of silly, whereas you could have gone a completely different road. You could have done like a scarab, or you could have done a cobra, or even like a sphinx. Like if we're gonna go the mythological route, you could have done the sphinx. That might have been cool.
That's true.
But instead we got a mummy. Little disappointed. I'll say that much. Out of 5, what would we give London Calling? I'm gonna stick with a 3.5 because the tonal shift is a little weird. I don't hate it, but it definitely gives you a little bit of that whiplash. Like, oh, we're not dealing with Robert. Okay. And we're dealing with this weird dude in robes. All right. That's what I'm saying. It's weird whiplash kind of feeling.
I'd go with a 3.5.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just weird. So then we get into the final episode 32, Darkness at the End of the Tunnel, which I guess Zenitaph was hinting at something bigger. So after this outing, Mr. Dickinson then says, okay, I'll apparently cancel my plane tickets for you, and I'll rearrange to have you guys take a train. I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's the underground train that you take from the UK to Paris. I think they called it the Channel, but I'm not sure if that's actually the name for it.
I don't know.
So they're going to take that so that they can get onto the European continent and start making their way to Russia. And this is where, we basically get a bunch of education, which I'm sure kids really appreciated. And they get on the train, and it's mysteriously empty. Funniest thing about that. And it starts going, and then we get a weird scene where we see a couple of workers there going, hey, is that train supposed to be going anywhere? I don't think so. And then we shift to, oh, look, it's Zenitaph. He apparently is going to take us all to Paris. And all the while, he decides to change the traveling movie to a bunch of horror flicks, which apparently get to Kenny, because apparently he actually is getting scared, whereas Tyson and Max are not being affected at all. Ray was busy eating and then looking for a bathroom, and Ray then begins to notice, oh, yeah, there really isn't anybody on this train. To which he goes back to them and says, holy shit, there isn't anybody on this train. I should also point out, this is where, when he gets to the dining car, he finds a silver dollar and goes, ooh, lucky me. We'll probably never hear about this ever. He goes back to the car that they're in and says, yeah, there's nobody on this train, to which the train stops. That's when Kai basically says, you go check one of the driver cars, I'll go check the other one.
The navigation or the navigator?
Well, it's the way that the train is supposed to work is that either or can be used. And so at that point, they were just looking for a driver. And turns out there are no drivers. I don't even know where Zenithal went. They decide to get off and start walking, to which they now come into contact with the Dark Bladers. That was what they were called, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for some reason, today I was thinking like they were called the Dark Breakers, and maybe this is just another Bladebreakers problem with me. So then we get to meet Zenithaf's brothers, I guess. Sanguinex, Lupinex, and Zom. Yes, Zom. Okay. To which they all have Beyblades. They are basically the Team Rocket, I guess, of this universe. They want to... except they don't want to steal your Pokemon. They want to destroy your Bit Beasts. And in turn gain their power. And one of the reasons that Zenithal decided to change it to a horror flick is because he wanted to increase the fear in this aspect. So Sanguinex is obviously vampire-based. Lupinex is werewolf-based. Zom, I guess, is supposed to be Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Or zombie. I don't know. He's literally spelled Z-O-M-B. So
I want to say it's more of a Frankenstein.
It felt more like a Frankenstein, especially when we got to see his Bit Beast, or his Beyblade that had, like, bolts in it. So, yeah, I would take a guess on that. But the Dark Bladers decide to challenge to defeat their Bit Beasts and absorb their energy, to which he challenges Tyson, Ray, and Max. No, originally it was just Tyson and Sanguinex, where we get to see his Beyblade, which was called Drac Attack, I think? Not the greatest name ever. So we get Drac Attack, and it looks like Tyson's got the upper hand, but of course, this is Team Rocket we're talking about, so they're not going to play fair. Lupinex sends out Wolfstorm, I think is what his Beyblade was named. And so now this is when Drigger and Drasil get brought into it, and they start losing badly, especially now that, I should also say the reason that they're actually battling is because Zenithal has grabbed Kenny and said, if you don't battle, then we'll take Kenny, etc. And for some reason, Kai is just not helping. Kai is just like, I don't see a need. To which this is the point where Kenny tries to start figuring out how to beat their Bit Beasts, because they start summoning them out. And yes, their Bit Beasts are basically a vampire, so basically Dracula, and the Wolfman. We don't get to see Zoms in this one, but what we're guessing through the look of the Beyblade is probably Frankenstein-based. And so at that point, Kenny starts trying to look for a way to be able to beat them so that they do not absorb their Bit Beasts and they lose them forever. And I actually remember, Ray didn't come out right off. So this was just Tyson and Dragoon and Drasil.
Yeah.
To which, at that point, they remember from the movie that vampires were repelled by crosses. So what do they decide to do? They decide to work together to create a flashbang, so to speak, which is basically a giant light in the form of a cross. Okay, I'm okay with that. Because, again, ultraviolet light, so at that point, you still would be playing into the weakness of the vampire, which is the ultraviolet light. I'm okay with that. In the form of a cross, fine. Aesthetics. Here's where, in my opinion, the episode went off the rails, because they then go, okay, how do we handle the Wolfman? Well, we need silver to be able to beat the Wolfman. No, you don't just need silver, you need a silver bullet. Or a silver knife. And in the movie, they just saw like a silver candelabra. So like, okay, what are we going to do? Ray gets the idea of, oh yeah, remember that silver dollar from way back? I'm going to put it on top of my Bit Beast so that the projector can't show the Bit Beast, and somehow this is going to create a silver armor that forms around Drigger. And that's how they beat the Wolfman. I call bullshit on so many levels on this, but we'll get there. And this is how ultimately Lupin X and Sanguine X lose, because this is when a rescue crew, remember earlier, they're like, was that train supposed to be leaving? A rescue crew comes down to come and pick up the boys, and the Dark Bladers have to escape because they don't want to get caught. To which at this point, then we get to have a little bit of a serious conversation between the four of them, basically saying that, yeah, now we might have to deal with these Dark Bladers as we make our way to Russia, and we'll have to get stronger as we go so that we can not only beat them, but we can also do well in the Russian tournament. And that's where the episode ends. So, Andrea, what did this episode do right?
It was just fun to see that kind of a battle, though.
What exactly was fun about it?
Just seeing that.
Just seeing new Bit Beasts, seeing new enemies. What?
Well, just kind of seeing that there are a monster type of Bit Beasts.
Yes, these are supposed to be like universal horror monster Bit Beasts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there, but it's just because I think, much like with Zenithaf, I don't have a problem with the Wolfman one. The Wolfman one was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But making Dracattack into a Dracula when it could have easily been like a gargoyle or a giant vampire bat or something like that, where it could have stayed in the motif of Bit Beast.
That's true.
That would have been cooler, in my opinion, but you're talking to a rabid Castlevania fan. So at that point, that's where I was kind of disappointed. But again, that kind of runs into the same problem as Zenithaf, where like it could have been a scarab, it could have been a sphinx, and those all would have been very appropriate with the Mummy kind of deal. And they just kind of, in my opinion, they missed the ball on it. But you liked it.
I didn't mind it, yeah.
Okay. And you did you also like that they had like the weird traits where the Dracattack one could hang upside down and
It was
like a bat
cool.
and all that.
It was cool.
I'm gonna be honest. This is why I'm saying I think I'm seeing these for the first time, because I do not remember the Dark Bladers at all. I think maybe the name sounds familiar, but when I saw these guys, I'm like, I have never seen these people. How come I've never seen these people? Because this is kind of an interesting concept. I'm not as on board with the Universal Monster theme as you are, but that's just because like you could have gone with the Bit Beast a little bit more. Like I've explained. But as a positive, I would say like, okay, these are new. They're very weird, but I'm not going to say they're bad. Because again, this is kind of like having, oh, now we have evil Beybladers. And again, this is kind of going back into when Kai was having that conversation with his dad, where they had, his grandfather, where they had like specific targets. So that kind of got my brain going, okay, are these the targets? But then Kai wasn't interested, so I guess not. And it didn't even sound like he knew who they were. So, yeah, they're just weird. I'm not necessarily saying it's a positive. They're just weird. Any other positives?
No, not really.
Do we have any feelings on how Kenny's fear kind of played into this episode? Was it a good thing or a bad thing?
It was annoying, really, but
okay, all right, I'll give you that. It kind of was. So I guess that's where we start with the negatives, because it was annoying to you. Do you want to explain why it was annoying?
Well, it's like Kenny's like, well, I can't concentrate. So
So you didn't like the stereotype of like somebody has to be scared when the horror movies are on.
Oh yeah,
kind of thing, and so that ended up being Kenny.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Would you have preferred that it be someone else, or you just didn't like it?
It's just annoying, really.
Okay. I'll tell you one thing that was annoying. not going into the actual weaknesses of the Universal monsters. I'm sorry. I'm calling bullshit. I at least can give Sanguinex a little bit because they formed a cross, but it was still daylight. It was still supposed to be like this blinding light. I can give you that because that still plays into a vampire's weaknesses. Putting a silver dollar on a top that's obviously going to fall off, and no, that molds silver armor around it. No!
Well, it could have been worse.
No, I call bullshit!
Well, it could have been worse. They could have thrown garlic at it.
I don't have a problem with the vampire one. It's the wolf one I have an issue with.
I know, but still.
Well, they could have done that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But where would they have gotten the garlic from?
That's true.
Oh, wait, you know what? Never mind, I just answered that. Ray did eat. So you gotta guess that, like, garlic was probably there.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. Here's my problem with it, is that you had your answer. Because one thing that Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and Frankenstein would all be weak to is fire! And it just so happens you have a Bit Beast that is based in fire! But no, Kai wasn't interested in bringing out Dronzer at all. This would have been a moment for Kai to shine because his literal attack for Dronzer is called Fire Arrow! You didn't have to do the whole, we're gonna wrap Drigger in silver. No! Dronzer comes out and burns everything to cinders! That would have been the solving way to do it, but no, they didn't do it. Kai was just apparently too elite to be able to be bothered with this, even though he was admitting that they were kind of screwed.
Well, it was also funny that Kenny kind of called him out on it, saying, like, him was...
I stand with Kenny on this because he did absolute jack shit. And this is actually one of those times where they could have highlighted Kai and his training and all of that, and they still didn't do it. So that's my big negative with this. I'm not necessarily going to call the Dark Bladers a big negative because they're weird enough to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, like, I do like that they're all evil Beybladers and that they're all in dark robes and they all have motifs about them.
I just can't remember how many episodes you'll see them again, or
I don't know. Like I said, I don't remember them. So at that point, I obviously haven't seen their arc. So I guess all of this is going to be new to me. But yeah, out of 5, what would we give Darkness at the end of the tunnel? I'm going to go right down the middle. I think that there was some good here. I do think there was a lot of bad. But some of the bad can be justified. So right down the middle, I'm going to give it a 3.
I'll give it 3.5.
Okay, so you liked some of the elements there. And that's all the ones that we have. So far, we're 32 episodes in. You're still excited to finish this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still kind of there, although I am feeling the pain in my neck from all the whiplash, but not in a bad way. It's gotten me... I don't want Andrea to take this the wrong way. It's gotten me interesting to the point where I get to see something new, but I'm not sure if I'm excited for it yet. So, because I do know that we face Robert later. I just thought he was at the next tournament, but apparently he's not going to be there.
Well, just because he said he wasn't going to be there doesn't mean I don't...
And I know that they face off against a bunch of people in Europe, but I just don't remember Dark Bladers ever being part of it. I don't even remember them being a team leader. Are they a team leader?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. So at that point, I guess I've got a bunch of stuff to look forward to because I've never seen it. Or maybe I'm just not remembering it. But that's why I'm saying it's like straight down the middle. It's a weird element that might be intriguing, but we'll have to see. And you were giving it a 3.5 because you like where they're going with it. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So thank you guys so much for joining us. When we come back, it's going to be episodes 33 through 36. where we're going to continue, or we're basically going to start our trek through Europe, I believe, and make our way to the Russian tournament. If you guys liked what we are saying, feel free to leave a comment down below and give your thoughts on the Dark Bladers and Robert and all that stuff. I would love to be able to have that conversation. Also, if you're brand spanking new, make sure to like the video or like the podcast. We really do appreciate it. And consider subscribing on YouTube. It helps us out with the algorithms here. Or if you're just listening in podcast form, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Player.fm, and of course Spotify if you aren't on those. And that definitely helps out. Leave a review. It helps us out there as well. And we will see you guys next time for episodes 33 through 36 of Beyblade Season 1. Until then, you got to say it, Andrea. You got to say it.